It's become objectively clear, I think, that men have a problem. Young men have a number of different issues that we have been ill-served to deal with on our own. And so it has left a question: who is going to fix young men in America? And there is a guy who has stepped up and has made a great deal of money attempting to talk to these men, write for these men, deliver YouTube debates for these men. That is Jordan Peterson, the professor of psychology, technically. And I have not actually consumed much of his work, I'm going to be honest. And so I'm lucky to be joined now on the Damage Report by Lori Penny, a journalist and author. Most recently of Bitch Doctrine, Essays for Dissenting Adults, whose work has appeared in The Guardian, Time Magazine, BuzzFeed, The New York Times, Vice, and basically everywhere. Welcome to the show.
Oh, hello, how are you?
I'm good, and I'm very glad to have you here. So I very much enjoyed your recent article. It's on Long Reads about Jordan Peterson and your dissection of his movement. And so I wanted to ask you first, you have a quote in the article: "If every generation gets the intellectuals it deserves, we're in serious trouble." And I have felt that for some time. Why have we ended up with people like Jordan Peterson exploding online?
Well, I think, the first thing you got to say about Peterson's, particularly his latest book, is that it kind of undermines its own premise by merely existing, because the whole idea, part of the idea is that it's, men rise to the top because of meritocracy. Men, hang on, sorry, that was surprise Jordan Peterson, he just appeared on my screen.
He cut into mansplain over you, I apologize.
Anyway, no, the idea that, men rise to the top because, their ideas are just the most brilliant and they're the strongest and the best, and it's not, gender inequality or centuries of structural oppression. It's, it's just the way the world works. This book is a real mess. 12 Rules for Life. It's not that it's objectively wrong. That's the second issue. It makes no sense. Like, if you sit down and read it, and I've done that twice because I hate myself and, I don't have anything to do with this in my house. Yeah, it is this weird sort of trippy logic. And, buried in there is about a third of a decent self-help book.
Yes.
And I like to read self-help books because, as previously mentioned, I hate myself. I don't actually. Because I read self-help books, and some of them have quite, some of them have quite interesting things to say and useful things to say, even though they're wrapped up in that fluffy, self-actualizing language. And most of the things that are actually useful tips in Jordan Peterson come from these books. You can read all this in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is actually quite a good book, even though it was written by a Mormon who doesn't mention it.
Yes. So I want to cut to one of my core concerns as an outsider to his work. I have not read his books, I haven't consumed much of his material, and I don't go to the darkest sections of Reddit, so I don't come across them very often. And some of his fans will probably watch this video and they'll think, why is this guy being so aggressive towards him? Now, there are some people I think that are dismissive of people like Jordan Peterson. I would say that I'm more aggressive because I actually care about men coming to grips with these their feelings, and I feel like there's a great opportunity cost to them being deceived. But
there's a huge hunger, and actually one of the things that happened after I wrote that piece is a lot of people reached out to me, and a lot of men reached out to me and said, thank you so much, because there've been lots of good dissections of his work. Thank you for taking the scales from my eyes, because I was getting recruited. I don't think Peterson is actively seeking to recruit young men to a kind of misogynist, racist, neo-nationalist fantasy, but he, willing or no, he provides an entry point, because people go from, the Peterson rabbit hole and all the kind of weird YouTube videos about the slaying the great mother dragon by symbolically tied in your bedroom, but then they go down the darker route. And Peterson is not a fascist, or much as I love to call everyone a fascist because it's so good to say, Peterson's not a fascist. He just, provides an entry point for people who are attracted to that, that sense of restored pride. Yes. That's what he gives them. Look, everybody who engages with media and ideas has some kind of superpower based on who they are, and is often related to race and gender and class, but sometimes it just comes from, so Peterson seems to have this sort of miasma of authority. He can literally read the phone book, and if you read the transcripts of what he writes, it is. I mean, look, I've read them several times. They're on his website. It's a lot of. It sounds like the Book of Revelation, as funneled through an acid filter. At least that's what it sounds like to me. Honestly, I can't tell the difference between this and some of what my university friends used to come up with of really weird late nights smoking weed and ranting about literary theory. But it sounds sort of authoritative. It sounds like, there must be something here, and, it sounds prideful, and there's some vague stuff about restoring, a real idea of masculinity and honor, and, and quite old fashioned in some ways, but also, the idea that women are, the agent of chaos, and all the bad things that come from chaos are symbolically feminine, and you have to conquer the symbolic feminine, which is also the chaos. I don't know, it doesn't make sense. We shouldn't engage with it as if there's a coherent internal ideology, because there isn't, but that incoherence is sort of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that he doesn't pay that much more attention to his work than some other people do. But I want to ask you a question, I think, to sort of cut to, I want to give the best, I want to be fair. So he is in some way a self-help sort of guy. He is laying out a sort of philosophical and in some cases practical guide to how you can improve yourself, and that's in competition with any number of others. Is there, in your writing, in your writings, in your research, is there any evidence that the men who read his books, who consume his material and actually enjoy it, these are not the people who flee, these are the people who actually like it, are they improving their lives through this?
Well, I'm not sure that's the most important question. I think there are some real people. I think there are people who have felt more confident and less hopeless because of this. But I think we need to look. I think at the moment the entire world is captured, and has been for some time, by the idea that any ideology and any set of ideas is okay as long as it helps men get over their hurt feelings. And I think that's what we need to get beyond. I don't think the fact that I genuinely believe, I would be surprised if people haven't in some way, got their lives in more order after, reading Jordan Peterson telling them to tidy their room. I am actually a real fan of tidy your room philosophy. Making your bed every day. I literally do that. I've been doing that for 5 years. It comes from Gretchen Rubin. But look, it's I don't think that's worth it. Is it worth it? If men elected Donald Trump to make themselves feel a bit better. Is that worth it? They probably do feel better. Some of them.
Yeah, I should be clear. I'm not saying that I think that it would justify. It's just that in my bit of reading and forum posts, very often the people of these sorts of movements, they don't really seem to be happier. They still seem to be quite angry and frustrated, and it seems almost like there's a sort of I guess sort of a familiar thing to having a group where you can dwell in the same sort of resentment. And they seem to like that, I think. I'm not saying that's for this movement, but others perhaps.
Yeah, I think it doesn't last long. This sort of great Kate Mann, who is the greatest feminist philosopher of her generation, wrote in the Times Literary Supplement that Peterson's work is a sort of short-term analgesic, it's a temporary painkiller, and it's not going to make people feel better about the underlying problem, which is that people, men and young men in particular, are angry at perceived loss of status and feel hopeless and dejected and feel that the world owes them things and women owe them things. And they're not being given the things that they owe, and the idea that they might actually have to change the way they're thinking about, among other things, women and sexuality, that's not offered. So I don't think it's not a long-term solution. Although the bits about taking basic care of yourself, that helps. That's as a feminist, I wish more men would do that, because then I wouldn't have to do it.
As a man, I wish more men did. Now, of course, you did not owe us any of your time, but I appreciate you giving me your time and lending your expertise in this area. This has been Laurie Penny, author of Bitch Doctrine, Essays for Dissenting Adults, whose work is supported at patreon.com/Laurie Penny. Laurie, thank you for joining the Damage Report.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching this video from the Damage Report. Please don't forget to like the video and also to subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as soon as new videos become available. To hear even more about both this topic and other issues not being covered nearly enough by the mainstream media, you're gonna wanna tune in every morning to our full hour-long show. That's at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, available on the TYT Network channel on YouTube TV.